Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight for this special show with my good friend Chris Parmalu, and we're joined by a special guest tonight, Scott Fiedler. Scott, thank you for joining us. How are you this evening?
I'm great, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Oh no, all right. Thank you for coming. It's totally our pleasure, so to speak. So before we get started, a little bit about how to win a horse racing handicapping contest. So it's a very lot of pressure on you this evening. Why don't you kind of give us a little background on how you got into horse racing and how you got to where you are today?
Okay. Well, it all started with my grandfather, and he used to sneak me out to a place called Nathan's, which was a hot dog joint in New York, for those who don't know, because he wasn't allowed to eat hot dogs either at the time. So he used to sneak there, and then we would go to the OTB so my grandmother wouldn't know we were betting. And then he would always say, just tell her we were at Nathan's. You had a hot dog. I didn't have anything. So it all started with my grandfather. He taught me a lot of things about reading the form and, all the old school things at that OTB. And then as I got older, we went to play the Trotters. We had Roosevelt Raceway on Long Island. So we used to go when we were in high school, a bunch of us. And my dad had a friend, those horse players would know George Berkner, who was a trainer. BG's Bunny was his big horse back in the day. So he taught me a lot of things as well. And, and then the contest was sort of almost on accident. I think a lot of us find these by accident. It was the original one I played was called Derby Wars, which I'm not even sure they're still around because Horse Tourneys has really taken over the tournament sites with their big. For players like us, it doesn't make sense to play for, we're usually playing for the big money tournaments, and Horse Tourneys has all of those, other than the NHCs and the live money tournaments. So it was Breeders' Cup. Songbird was in it. So I can't remember how many. It got to be about 9-10 years ago. I stumbled across this thing. I said, wow, this is interesting. I got a $10,000 tournament. Let me try this. And I wound up winning it that day.
On the first go, huh?
Yeah, first go around. And I said, boy, this is an interesting way to play. I've always, I used to always tell people I think of myself as an excellent handicapper. And sometimes when you bet, you just do things you shouldn't do. You're trying for that exactly instead of just saying, hey, I really love the 6 horse. Why don't I just bet him to win in place? You're always going for that the triple, my downfall of the pick 4s and pick 5s and pick 6s. I'll hit some triples and exactas, and then I give it back sometimes, trying to play a pick 5. So the tournaments have been great. And then, of course, I found Horse Tourneys. After that, they became the big site. They were putting up bigger money than the others, and I had won a bunch of tournaments there. And then, of course, I won the big tournament a couple summers ago for big money on that day. And some days I wish I could just sit and play the horses and not have to go to my kids' basketball games and all of the things that you don't want to miss. I mean, I was laughing. There was a big tournament this weekend, and I was in 20th place when I went to my daughter's basketball game. Of course, the internet didn't work very well at the court she was playing at, and I come home and I'm in 80th place.
Oh, yes, I've been there.
Yeah, then I come back and I'm in like 37th, and my son has a game the next day and the same type of thing. And I said, oh boy, here we go. So you live with that. I mean, a lot of it's preparing beforehand, though, Rich. That's been that's been the key to it. I mean, it's like anything else. I think you have to put the time in. You have to have a plan. You have to have think, but there is a way to. You're not going to handicap in 10 minutes. Everyone goes, why don't you show me what you could do? And, I got a lot of people asking me. I said, listen, it's a job in itself doing this stuff. And if I'm handicapping a featured tournament, I'm spending a good 3 hours at the least, on those races between, watching replays and backtracks, as I like to call them, and the different things in that regard. So.
Sounds like a lot of work for sure. So, quick question. Well, let me bring Chris in tonight. Chris,
Sure.
say hello to Scott.
Hey Scott, it's good to talk to another horse player, and it brings a smile to my face because
Me too, Chris.
I like hearing about the fact that it's interesting that as a horse player world, because I got my start in harness racing as well. My dad had horses growing up, and I tell you, there was a lot more old school capping back in those days versus computers and everything, and that's where I learned a lot of the basics. So it was nice to hear you say that.
I still do it old school, Chris. It's funny. I just never have. I mean, people have showed me different ways to do it, and I'm sure it would cut my time in half. I was funny. It was the NHC a couple of years ago, and someone was showing me that optics program that they have, and I'm a pace handicapper, and it was an interesting, read. But then at the same time, I started thinking, am I going to get lazy because I'm going to just go by what optics says and not see what I see, and it's interesting because there's a lot of different horse players out there. There's a lot of guys on the computers and doing the tech stuff, and then there's a lot of guys. I'm assuming, Chris, you're still the same old school handicapping for the most part.
I went old school, but I think I'm more computerized now. I actually have some really good data that helps me to work through some of this stuff. So it's kind of a balance with me.
I'd love to talk to you about that off the air sometime. It would be interesting to me. And I think, Rich, that's a important point. I think you're always learning in this, in any game, in anything you're doing, in any game, you're playing, and we were a big sports family, and if you weren't learning, you were going backwards. If you're not getting better, you're going backwards. And I think, it's interesting to me, and what I do love about horse players is it's almost like a fraternity. A lot of guys are pretty good guys, and they'll, give you some tips and different things that, you could use. And I've always, I'm always willing to give it to anybody as well,
So you say you're from a sports family, so you play competitive basketball, right?
I did. Yep. I played competitive basketball. I coached college for a number of years after I played. And my dad was a basketball coach. And then those are people that know my brother played in the NFL for 11 years. So
nice. Good to hear. It's a hardworking family for sure. Okay, let's get off to the contest now. So one of the things that happens to me all of the time, and I don't know if I have to make the separation yet. I have won one contest. It wasn't for a whole lot of money, $1,200, but I was happy. About 300 people competing on the horse tourney for I think it was Belmont, but in any case, so you pretty good competition. But I've been in a lot of tournaments where I'm trying to pick the winner, and I can pick 6 winners out of the 10 card, out of the 10 race card, or 5, and then I'll have 1 or 2 run second, and then I'll lose to the guy who has 3 winners, all of which are bombs. So is there a change of mind frame from trying to pick winners like you do at the track to cash tickets versus playing in contests to find the highest priced horse that has a chance to win?
Yes. That's the simple. I mean, I'll be honest. Handicapping tournaments has made me a better handicapper in finding those horses. I always go in, and I said it years and years ago that I did an interview with somebody, and price matters. It does. And if you don't, you'll see all of these the big tournaments. The guy that's winning has had a price horse at some point in the contest. Now you could get away. There's days on a Thursday where you pick the 6 winners, you wind up winning a contest with $58, and it's crazy, but you don't see that often. And I mean, even yesterday there was a Wednesday tournament. Was at the beginning of the day. It was all favorites. It was picking winners, and then there were 2 bombs to end the day, and those were the people that won. That had at least one of them. I think the person that won had 2. So I think the first thing you have to go into, and there's so many different tournaments, obviously, Rich. You have the all optional to the NHC has optional races plus the mandatory. But let's just take a mandatory tournament, which is the majority of them. I think you have to go in to those, and you got to look at each race differently and say, hey, look, I got to pick winners, but I got to get a price somewhere along the line. And I've never won a tournament where I've picked winners and I don't, it's not a high. I don't have a high price horse at some point. And a high price horse could be a 10-1 shot. We're not talking. It doesn't have to be a bomb. You don't need a $64 cap horse either. You pick two 8-1s, 10-1s, and you get $37 with a good place horse. All of a sudden, you're in good shape. So, part of it is finding them, and then part of it's not panicking when you don't find them. I see guys that play tournaments. The first race is a big race. They don't have it. Oh, I'm done.
Mhm.
You're not done. You got 11 more races to go. There's a lot of time, and I think you have to stick to your plan. That's what I've really learned through the years of playing the tournaments is don't panic. Don't say, oh my God, like I was telling you with the flow cal the other day, I went from 20th to 80th. And the next day I played what I saw the day before, and I said, I'll chip away and hopefully, I get a little racing luck because there's some of that, you get a lot of big long shots that run second. So, you'll wind up picking up $12, even if you get a cap at $22. Well, if that horse won, you see you move up way more in that case. So, there's a lot of different ideas that way, but price does matter, Rich.
Mhm. Now you
Scott,
mentioned pace handicapping. I know, Chris, you're a pace handicapper. I wonder if that's where you were going with this. I'm sorry, Chris.
no, I was curious because it sounds like with your busy schedule, I'm assuming you're not doing live tournaments. You're probably doing pick and pray.
I've done a lot. I like the pick and praise because of that. I played plenty of live. A lot of times in the live, if it's during a Friday, Saturday, I'll put it in as a pick and pray. So I'll do my work beforehand and whatever. But in the big tournaments, I think it's important to see. You guys are all horse players. There's underlying factors and will pays and different things of where is that live long shot in a live tournament. And then the problem with the live tournament, Chris, obviously, is as you get to the end, you better be playing live if you're in the top 10, because you may wind up going to a different horse based on it's the only chance I have to win, the tournament. And to me, I play to win them. I'm not playing for second place. If I wind up from second to fifth because I tried to win the tournament, then so be it. I'll lose a few dollars and I'll, an interesting story last year. I remember, I'm sure you've seen the name Albion Benton, who plays in a bunch of tournaments. He was at the NHC and he was in second place going into the last race, and he took a shot on a horse to win the whole thing and didn't work out. And he wound up dropping a spot. So he probably lost, he probably lost about $80,000 in his pocket. And, I made sure I found him afterwards and I said, hey, Al, that was a great play. You played to win the tournament, because how many times are you going to get a chance to win the NHC?
Right.
And you were in it, you put yourself in position to win it, and then you went for it. And he could have played the other horse very easily and he would have finished second. And, so be it, he would have won a few more dollars. But like I said, I think you have to go in with the idea that you're going to play for first place. And it is a big difference. You look at all these tournaments, first place is on a feature on a Friday, it's $9,000. Second place is 2 or 3, so there is a difference in money there. So if you could win a few, I know a lot of guys with me, they go, we'd rather finish first or last. You're playing 2 entries. I don't want to finish 15th and 16th.
You one right out of the money, right? That happens to me a lot. So
been there a lot too, Rich.
So you say you do pace handicapping. So are you more, when you say pace? I know we talked to the gentleman who won the NHC last year. He said he's a straight speed handicapper, probably looking for horses that get to the front. Are you looking for horses that are outliers? So you got a lot of closers in speed, or a lot of speed and closers, some on the front, some in the back, and one in the middle. When you say pace, kind of what are you looking for?
Like most pace handicappers, I'm trying to predict who's going to go to the front? Is there going to be pressure on them? Is there going to be a lot of speed in this race where it is going to be a closer? Is there going to be a horse that's lone speed and, went off? I mean, one of the great handicapping tools I've always used is, speed versus better that fades. And then they drop. And the next time, he goes off at 10-1 because people see finish 7th. And, it becomes a different, a different horse. The speed carries, as they say. So I look for that. Long shots. I love when there is a lot of speed, and now the hardest part is picking which closer is going to get there. I've had a lot of times, Rich. I think I've predicted which races are going to be the long shot, and I'm sure a lot of horse players can understand this. And you just picked the wrong horse. It's a long shot race. I mean, I go into the tournaments and I'll look at, let's say it's a 10 thing, and I'll say, all right, these 6 races, I think we're going to have a chance for a price. Now, a lot of times I'm right about that, but I don't have the right horse, so it happens that way. But yes,
do you have any rules in terms of, I know, Chris, you have a set of rules that you apply. Do you have a set of rules that if you have, I know, Chris, like if you have 4 horses, you're looking for a certain odds to play that horse in a contest? Do you have any rules like that, Scott? Like one, if you only like one, you're willing to go with it as long as it's the favorite. But if you like 4, I want odds of X, Y, Z or higher.
I mean, I have several rules, obviously. Number one rule is I like to beat the favorite. That's the first one. If you can't, but there's, I've learned to take money too, and that's been one of my rules that a lot of people, when they're early handicap, they're thinking they have to get price every race. And, I was talking about it years ago when I won the Spa and Surf in 2020. The difference, the margin of difference was the first 3 races of day 2. I had 2 favorites and a 7-2 shot. And that became the margin of difference for winning the tournament. And it was, I could have easily not played those, but then I'm like, you know what? Sometimes you just have to take money. So, even if it's $10, I mean, there was a race today. I don't know if you guys played the Thursday. There was a Thursday feature at Horse Tourneys. The first race of the contest, the horse was 2-5. It was a 3-horse race. I'm sure they were pissed off that they had that race. I said, you got to take the $3. It was the only way to do it. And as much as I wanted to take another one, I just said, I can't make a case for anybody. So I'm going to take the $3 and hopefully it makes a difference later,
Scott, another question I had is, I typically, when I'm playing in a lot of these tourneys, I just say, you know what, it feels like a good day to play a tourney. Mm-hmm. Do you actually look at a card first to decide if you're going to play a tourney, or do you just jump all in and just play a tourney? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'll be honest with you. If I play pick 5s, I do look at cards. For gambling purposes. Tournaments, I'll play. I think, if you're looking at it every time as, I got to be, perfect to the handicapper, you won't play many, So I enjoy them. My feeling on it, Chris, is, here is a Friday. It's a 10-race tournament. It's $190 to get in the feature. Well, I just played 10 races for $190. Even if I didn't win, if I was at the track, I may lose a lot more than that. So that's how I always looked at a lot of the tournament action, stuff like that. But, I do look at cards, obviously. I mean, there was a couple days ago, and I was talking to my buddy, and it's amazing. We all have these stories, at parks, they have that, the jackpot pick 5. Someone hit it the other day, and I called it. I called up a buddy of mine to play. I said, listen, the late pick 5 at Parks is a jackpot. We have a shot to win a jackpot. Why don't we play a ticket today? and we played a ticket. And of course, we had all the long shots that came in and missed one of the races that I think the horse was a $6 horse. So, and then the person wound up, whoever hit it, God bless them. They did great. They won 255,000, in a jackpot. So, but, Chris, to really answer your question, no, I don't, as far as tournaments go. I like to play. I like to play feature tournaments. I like to do those. I really don't play much other than the features, though. The big stuff, the weekend features, the different things, and then there are times, Chris, yes, when I look at my schedule and I say, oh Jesus, I got 4 basketball games or other games going on with the kids, and you know what? I didn't do the work for the pick and pray. I'm not playing this weekend. So. I guess it's a yes and no to the answer of do I look at it much.
Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
No, he's got me thinking now, and I'm
oh,
trying
no,
to pick his.
Look out!
I'm gonna pick his brain.
The room is gonna fill up with smoke.
Listen, I'm gonna win the Pegasus or something on Saturday. But the other part of it too is I'm just thinking about when you say you do replay work, because this question comes up a lot about replays. I do replay work too, but I'm very, very selective. What's your strategy? You're not watching replays of every single horse.
No.
How are you picking and choosing that stuff, Scott?
Based on one, I like a horse. So I'll look at, you're looking at the form. I'll say, hey, I like this horse, but you know what? I want to go look at this race. It looks like he closed well on paper. And Chris, as you go to a backtrack or a replay and everyone's dying in front of him and he comes in, he's moving up the in the lane, doesn't mean that he's going to do it against another horse. So now, for instance, with that, so I'll watch the horse that I think is going to close, Chris, and then I'll go back and watch 1 or 2 of the speed horse races too to see how they finished. So I'm trying to compare as best I can. And then, of course, you do have races where there are 5 horses that were in a race. I use Formulator. I go back as far as I have to for the replays.
So one of the things that happens to me, you mentioned you pick 10 to 1s. This happens to me too much to think about. So I'm going through it. I'm cognizant of the fact that I got to have some prices in there. I think you already know where I'm going with this. So I picked the 10 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time they get to post time, he's 6 to 5.
Yep.
Right. So is there something that you
do? Million times.
I mean, but is there something that you've learned throughout the course of the years? Like, okay, you think it's because maybe speed numbers are such a big factor that you like it, and maybe the speed numbers are going to lead people that way, or maybe some of the stuff that I pick up on, the algorithms pick up on as well, and that's why those horses come down? Because I've noticed a lot of times, as you mentioned early on, people who win, I think sometimes they exclusively just maybe throw out the first 3 morning line favorites and then focus on 4, 5, and 6 in the program, because I go back and look to see what other people did to win. And there'll be a 5 to 1 in there, 6 to 1 in there. It was a middle of the line morning line favorite that drifted up to 12 to 1, to 13 to 1, 14 to 1. Do you have any strategies in terms of identifying horses that you think are more likely to go up in odds than down in odds?
I wish I had a solid answer for that. I don't think any of us know that. I think if someone really thinks they know that, boy, I want to find out what their strategy is. Because I mean, there's times, Rich, I look and I go, this morning line's garbage. This horse is 10 to 1. He's going to be 6 to 5, and that. But a lot of you get price horses the opposite way a lot too, where it's a 7 to 2 morning line and that horse goes off at 14 to 1, and I wish I could predict some of those. I mean, that's why I think I like old school handicapping, because I'm not competing with the algorithms and the things that a lot of people are using, where, hey, I'm looking at things differently than the majority of players, and I think connections is a lot of times a big factor in these tournaments, because there's horses on paper that you go, you're really truly looking at paper and algorithms or whatever. That horse doesn't have a shot, but you'll say, hey, you know what? It was Billy Mott with Junior Alvarado, and the last time Junior rode this horse, he ran second, in a race that he could have won. So you're looking for little things that, as they say, other people don't see.
You mentioned old school handicapping. What's the one thing Grandpa taught you between hot dogs? That's something that you have to that it's a must in every race you handicap.
Well, you know what? It's funny because the form has changed a ton, Rich, since then. I mean, there's some stats that what he did teach me. The most important thing is you have to look at everything. That was his number one thing. Is there's no shortcut to this. If you're going to do this, and he went, piece by piece with the form back in the day of what this means. Is a horse dropping? Are they staying the same in class? What do the connections do? It's a second time off a layoff, third time off a layoff. You have to be cognizant of everything that's going on with it. The hardest part sometimes in the picket praise is knowing what the weather is at some of the tracks. So, you'll start on the East Coast and you'll be playing Gulfstream in Tampa and the tournament ends in Santa Anita and you didn't know it was raining there, or it was going to be a wet track, So, it's just paying attention. I mean, I'll go on and look at weather, now. I'll go to Hallandale, Florida to see what the weather report is, and I think the most important thing he taught me is you got to pay attention to all the details in it. And he was a big connection guy as well. He used to, if you guys remember back in the day, John Gruget, he used to, John Gruget on the green, Mean Gene on the green was his big line. And he would pick some long shots because of him.
So John Rice says 2 weeks ago, Saturday, multiple people hit price horses consistently. What angle makes this possible? I couldn't find one in review. So if you're looking for price horses, they're a go-to thing that you look for. Like if you see something in the form, when you see it, every time you see it, you're like, I'm going to play this horse.
I mean, there's times, there's, with the hand, number one, when you're playing tournaments, the beauty of it, Rich, is you're competing against some of the best players in the world, and to me, that's the fun of it, that, hey, look, I'm not going to win every one, and none of us are, but, these people that find consistent horses, they're just good horse players. I don't think there's any, if there was a specific rule for it, we'd all be playing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, there's little rules that, guys have. I mean, I know guys that'll play the longest shot in a 5-horse race every time that happens, and then you'll see a bunch of people hitting it because a lot of people, do that. So I don't think there's any consistent, way to pick a winner. I think you have to go with your handicapping skills. You look at your 10 races, and I go every day. I take I'm sorry about that. I have envelopes all over the place in my house that I write Gulfstream 6, 7, 8, 9, and and then I'll make my cheat notes. And just to show you, here's sort of this was a tournament from the other day, Gulfstream, and this was a live tournament, so I put several horses around to look at. If you look at the Gulfstream 6th, I loved the one horse. That was the only horse I was playing in that race. So you have to look at some of those as well. And then again, like I said, there's some racing luck to it. I don't care anybody that tells you there's not racing luck. When you lose by a head or a nose with a 20-1 shot or a cap horse, it makes a difference. And then, the one thing you can't predict either, Rich, that happens a lot in these tournaments is the place price. Mm-hmm. You could have a 20-1 shot that obviously is going to pay the cap for the win, but then the 3-5 shot runs second, so you're only going to get $10 maybe on the place price.
Right. I've been there too. I lost one on one where I had like a 10-1 that actually won, but I lost the tournament because the place money it was like 30 cents short. And I was
Yeah,
like, God,
isn't that the worst? The 20 cents. I've been there many a times. 20 cents, 10 cents short, and I mean, I'll be honest. The big tournament, the Flow Cow, recently, I liked the 4-horse in the last race of the tournament as well, and I wound up going off him because he got bet down to 6-1, and I know it. I think he actually dropped. I think he was 8-1 and dropped to 6-1 when the race started, and I think it cost a few people the win.
So John Rice wants to know: do you prefer the pick and pray or the live tournaments?
John, if I have time, you know what? I like the pick and praise, John, because you can't get someone throwing darts at the end of a tournament. That was the one thing I always hated about the live. You'll do all this work, everything's wonderful, you're doing great, and someone throws a dart at a 20-1 horse that there's no way they picked them.
Mm-hmm.
And it just happened to come in. So I think as a handicapper, I like the pick and praise. Obviously, the live tournaments are the big money a lot of times. So yes, I mean, I like the live as well. Actually, and Chris was talking about the Pegasus. I've liked the live money tournaments now. They've become a lot of fun. I played in the BCBC for the first time this past year, and I thought that was tremendous.
So in these larger tournaments where they have a bigger price, I noticed in some of the smaller ones I play, because I haven't won any big ones yet to fund the bigger ones, but a lot of these smaller ones or these like qualifying ones, you'll see people just bet 4s across the board or 5s across the board. Does that happen in the bigger tournaments too? Or do people, because they're putting more money at play, do they tend to be a little bit more honest in their handicapping?
I think they're more honest. I mean, you'll see some of them. I mean, I've had days where I go, oh my God, I got 6s in a row, and you're thinking, oh, this is just crazy, but it's what you liked,
Mm-hmm.
It just happened that way. And it happened that the way the tournament was structured, the 6s kept in a way. But yes, I think the bigger tournaments, you're not seeing someone just put their 4s in and, doing crazy things like that. And, that's what would drive me nuts about some of these tournaments where someone would win because they just put all 3s in or, and got lucky.
Yeah, I sent Chris a screenshot of one time where it was 4-4-4-4 across the board. I said nobody should ever win a handicapping contest just by doing this. They should be by default disqualified.
Yeah,
absolutely. It should be a key thing. So getting back to kind of some of the structure stuff, Scott, I've read a lot about people that have this formula where they try to figure out, well, I've got to get to $80 in the tournament to actually win it. And where I was going with that is, if you like horses you like and you go through, and I think I'm guilty of this a lot of times because I don't like to pick losers. I go through and I pick 4 races where the horse looks like he's legit and he's going to come in. And we all know we've got to hit prices on this, but is there any steadfast rule that you refer to going back? Like, I've got to hit $75 as my plateau when I go back and I manage and I look at all those numbers?
I think it depends on the tournament you're in, Chris. I think there's tournaments you could win, at $50. And then there's, on the big days, the big 2-day tournaments or the NHC, you have to find some price horses. So, I've been to the NHC twice. I never really did it. I've gone now 2 years in a row. I'm going for my 3rd year. I think I'm going to play that a lot different than I have in the past. I was trying to hit a bomb every race there, and I mean, the first year I was there, I had a 17-1 shot get taken down on an inquiry, and I said, "Oh boy, there goes my day."
Mm-hmm.
I was putting myself right in a good spot. Next thing I know, he's taken down and placed 3rd. I didn't even get the place price. So, things happen in these tournaments that you just have to stick to what you're doing. I mean, I always look. I go into every race, Chris, in a tournament, looking to try to beat the favorite. So I want. So if it's a 10-horse, a 10-race field, I'm digging deep to see. All right, can I beat these favorites? Now, is there a price horse, or is it take the 4-1? So that I'm very rarely playing a 2-1 horse, obviously a 3-5. I'm not. Obviously, today was an aberration with the
And only three
three-horse
horses. What can you
race.
do, right?
But yeah, there's nothing you could do in that one. But I'm looking to, one of my rules is I'd like to get 7-2 or more. That's one of my rules that I'm looking to get. And is there, to answer your question about a set number, Chris, I don't know if you could predict that. I think that, like I said, on big days, yes, you could, you're going to have to, on a 2-day tournament, you're going to have to get $300, to win it. It just is. So, it tells you're going to have to pick a few 40, $50 horses just to get to that level.
When you say 40-50, you mean that the combined first and
The
second.
combined, yeah, total 40-50. Yes, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, so not 40 to 50 to 1. John, once again, wants to know, do you use, what PPs do you use the most and why?
I use the Formulator, the Daily Racing Form Formulator. It's what I'm familiar with, John. It's easy to look at the replays on the Formulator. I think there's a lot of trainer angles that you could pick up if you're really paying attention to the Formulator. They show a lot of good. Formulator shows a lot of good stuff with trainers and connections and things that sometimes don't show up on the race paper. As they say, you look at a horse that the trainer had this pattern, and he's got the same pattern coming up with this horse now. Oh, shoot, he's 17, 18 to 1. I think he's got a shot, and it's more comfort level. Like I said, I mean, I've had guys show me optics and different other, brisnet and race lens and a lot of those things. But it's what I'm comfortable with, at this point.
So do you put more emphasis on trainers than you do on jockeys?
Yes. I think, again, jockeys, the problem you have with jockeys is it's tough to, Rod Ortiz is not going to bring in a long shot very often unless he's with an obscure trainer. If he's riding for Todd Pletcher, that horse is going to go off at 2-1 a lot of times.
Absolutely. And one thing about him, though, when he's got the lead in the lane, he's not going to let you pass him.
No, I mean, listen, if I'm betting at the track, I do play jockeys as well. There's some guys I wouldn't bet in a million years back in the day when I was younger.
Scott, favorite long shot angle, besides the one you told us already about the early speed fade and going back.
Early speed and fade is one of my favorite. The other is maiden special weight into a maiden claimer. I think that's unfortunately, a lot of people are figuring that angle out. But that is one of the great angles because the races look like crap in the maiden special, and they'll drop to a maiden 40, and their speed will carry in a maiden 40 where he finished up the track. Or I've seen a gazillion. When I won the big tournament, I had a Chad Summers horse that was a cap horse that dropped from maiden special to, I think it was a maiden 50. Really showed nothing on paper. I looked at an angle on Chad that day about him dropping, and I said, you know what, this is the horse to take a shot. Now, it was a little racing luck too. He won by a nose at the, just got up, but that's what you need to win these things.
Terry, our good friend Terry, wants to know what tracks the tracks that are being used in the tournament, do they help you decide which tournaments you want to play? Do you say, for example, if there's a track you don't like, you don't play the tournament?
No. There are tracks I like better than others. There's no question about it. I've done very well in the spa and surf all the time because I do love Del Mar and Saratoga. You know, they're two tracks I've traditionally done very well at. So, you know, in the last 2 years there, I've won it, and I finished in 24th place. You know, so they are two of my favorite tracks. Obviously, I'm on the New York circuit, so you know, if there's a New York circuit, but you know, in the wintertime, weather's a factor on it. So you know, I think you have to pay attention to those details more than the track. To me, you know, is what's the weather there? Is it a sloppy track? Is it going to get nicer as the day goes on? You know, you could start, as you guys know, you could start with the track being sloppy. By the time the seventh race gets there, it's fast, you know, and you've handicapped for a sloppy because it was a pick and pray. So, you know, weather's information as well, you know, it just is. And you know, scratches become important, you know, like, you know, the things I hate, like today was the worst. You do all this work the day before and there's a gazillion scratches, you know, and that would take me out of a tournament at times. You know, I just say, hey, I did all this work. Now I got to go back and do the work because, you know, it's not the same race anymore.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that. So one thing you've mentioned, you won the same tournament a couple of times, 24th in the other. How much do you think your attitude plays in that then? If you like, I feel good about these tracks, do you feel like you handicap better if you feel better about particular places?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think there's definitely some to that, you know, but at the same time, you know, it's funny. I used to tell people my favorite day of betting was Breeders' Cup Day. And everyone would go, well, why? I go, because as a horse player, you're playing against the public. And, you know, I used to say it's harder to make money on a Thursday at Aqueduct than it was on Breeders' Cup Day. Because, you know, you'll find a horse on Breeders' Cup Day that on a Tuesday at Aqueduct would be 2-1. That's 8-1. You know, and you have to start taking advantage of those type of thing. I mean, I used to love the Derby until they put the point system in. I think it's changed a lot of the way the Derby used to play. But you get people putting $2 on a horse because someone told them the colors look nice. You know, those are the days that, in particular, Chris. That's why I love the BCBC this year. You know, I would have bet money anyway. And now I'm betting it. That's live money, and you're in a tournament.
One other quick question for you. Horses being equal, who do you peg as the best jockeys?
Depending on track, obviously. Is that what you're...
Well, just say if the horses are all equal, who would you single out as your best jockeys?
I mean, obviously, Flavien Prat out west on the turf is a terrific rider. I think JJ Hernandez is starting to become a terrific rider out there. Obviously, the East Coast, the Ortiz brothers, you know, are terrific. I think what you need to find for these, and I think, you know, Dylan Davis to me is a terrific jockey who people don't, you know, he gets a lot of these long shot horses. I think you need to look at apprentices at times for this, you know, to get a price horse. You know, I think there's times you want to look at that, you know, hey, it's a sloppy track. Apprentice is getting 10 pounds. It makes a difference, you know, on some of those things. So, you know, Johnny Velasquez now on a speed horse. I think Luis Saez is no secret anymore, you know. So I think you have to find the Dylan Davises, you know, those guys as well that are just as Rispoli is a terrific rider out west, you know. And I think those are the guys you want to peg more than an Irad Ortiz or, you know, the guy that's the money's going to get bet down just because he's on the horse.
Money's going to chase him for sure. Well, we've had you for 45 minutes. I don't want to hold you much longer than that. Sure, you have things to do. Chris, you have any final thoughts or questions?
No, I just wanted to say thank you to Scott for your time because, you know, I've actually taken a lot of notes. So this is like a private conversation with me to make myself better. So I think a lot of what you said is spot on, and I appreciate the time here tonight.
Well, Chris, I appreciate it. I was going to ask Rich if I could, off the air, obviously grab your number, and I would love to talk to you about some of those analytical things that you put to use, because it would be a different view for me, And
I can
that.
connect the two of you, but I hope I can stay in touch with you too. A little bit of mentoring for me, maybe a
Rich,
couple of things I'm doing
Rich,
wrong that you can say, Rich, if you just turn it a little bit this way, you might
Rich,
do a
you
little
can
better.
stay in touch with me all you want. I think part of the horse game is passing on the knowledge, that you have to people. I love Joel Rosario also. That's right. Whoever just put that on, Lloyd Green. Rosario is a terrific jockey.
Indeed.
But I think passing on your knowledge in this, it only helps the sport. It only helps to keep it going. I love talking to guys about handicapping. There's nothing better to me these days than just saying, hey, I want to talk to a guy like Chris and say, hey, Chris, you do it different than I do. What could I learn from you? What could you take from me? What could I take from you to make us better? Everybody.
That's what we say about horse racing today. It's a community where we're trying to help everybody get better and beat the game, so to speak. Right?
Yep.
We don't want to be drunks sitting on needing to hit the river in between split fours and fives with the 2 and a 3 and try to get that card in the middle. We want to actually know what we're doing when we get out there. So we appreciate your time tonight, Scott. Wish you nothing but continued success in the tournaments, but I hope of what we've learned from you and I'm going to learn from you going forward, I start to see my name on top of yours once in a while.
That would be great, Rich. I talk to guys all the time. It's funny, it has become a community. There's a guy that I met at the NHC, Anthony Spiznola, who I'm sure you've seen his name on a bunch of the tournaments, and we'll be playing and I'll get a text from him. Hey, good luck. Keep it going. He beat me by, oh God, I think 80 cents to go to the BC to qualify for the BCBC just recently. And I said, well, if it was anybody, I'm glad it was you, and it hurts to be 80 cents off, but I was like, Anthony, I'm glad it's you that's going. So,
but when you get together with him down the line for that 80 cents, you can make him buy you dinner.
Thanks, Rich. Definitely will do that.
All right. Thanks for joining us tonight, Scott. As always, everybody, thanks for joining us. If you like what you saw, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You see it scrolling along on the bottom down there. Hit us up with the subscription on YouTube and the like button and all that kind of good stuff. You know the routine by now. You've heard it on thousands of shows. Thanks again, Scott. Have a great night. And I look forward to getting back together with everybody again shortly. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Chris. Nice meeting you guys.